From that launch in central London, here in Westminster, in fact, are the head of International Trade and Competition Unit at the Institute of Economic Affairs and Chief Executive of the consultancy Forte, Shanker Singham, and also the hotelier Sir Rocco Forte. Welcome to you both. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Rocco Forte, is this an alternative to agreeing the withdrawal agreement with the European Union that's currently on the table?
No, this is the next step. Everybody's concentrated on the withdrawal agreement. After we start negotiating the free trade deal, which is what it's all about. So this is a presentation on what a free trade deal would look like, which actually business people can engage with directly and develop views as to how it suits them or not.
So at this stage, does that mean you're supporting the withdrawal agreement as laid out by the Prime Minister?
Well, this is really about the next stage, as Sir Rocco said. What we're trying to do here is
we haven't got to the next stage yet.
Everyone understands.
Not much point in talking about the next stage if we don't get there, is there?
Yeah, no, it is. There's very much point in talking about the next stage, because what we don't want to do is be in the situation we're in now, where we're doing everything at the last minute because we're not ready. So what we need to do is put out on the table, and that's what we're doing today, without prejudice to whatever ultimate relationship we have with the EU. People understand the customs union, they understand the single market. What we want to do today is to show them what an FTA can do, what heavy lifting an FTA can do to minimise disruption between the UK and the EU, and then to have an engagement over time so that we don't get into a situation where we're right at the end of some other transitional period, let's say, and we haven't done our homework and we are panicking at the last moment. We want to get this out on the table. Some of these things will take time to negotiate. Some of them are much easier to negotiate, and we want to start that process as soon as possible. One of the problems, I think, in the process has been we haven't got text on the table in time to have a discussion, and that's what we want to do today.
Yeah, but with all due respect, this is, this is talking about unicorns, because until we know the basis on which we're leaving the European Union, we don't know the basis on which we're going to be negotiating. And many people might say this is a fairly cynical attempt to try and tie the government's hands at the next step.
Not at all. The government has talked very clearly, and Theresa May, the Prime Minister, has talked very clearly about a comprehensive trade agreement which will include a highly facilitated customs arrangement. So we're not talking about anything any different from that. What we're trying to do today is actually just to put legal text and to put flesh on the bones of what that actually means. We're clearly going to have this discussion at some point, and this is without prejudice to anything that is happening with respect to the withdrawal agreement and the potential changes to the withdrawal agreement. That's happening in another place at the moment, and we're fully supportive of that process as well.
And Sir Rocco, what difference, if this plan was adopted, what difference or benefits would there be for your businesses?
But my businesses aren't really affected to any great degree because I'm not trading directly. The way I operate in Europe is by having hotels in the individual countries. The way I will be affected in relation to the free movement of people. We employ a lot of foreign staff in the hotel industry, and obviously whatever is agreed eventually on free movement will have some impact. But in the hotel industry, we've always employed foreigners, even well before we joined the common market, and I don't see why we shouldn't continue to be able to do so in the future.
So you would need freedom of movement of foreign staff, including coming to your hotels in this country?
No, you have America. America is a country that's had more immigration than any other country in the world. It's been built on immigration. It's always had a controlled system of immigration, and there's no reason why we shouldn't control who comes into this country and how they come in and under what terms they come in. And,
so how would you get? A lot of your staff won't qualify for the skilled threshold of £30,000 a year earnings. So how would you get those staff coming into your hotels under this arrangement after freedom of movement of labour has been ended?
Obviously, nothing has been finalised yet on that. there obviously a system of visas, and people have to have a job to come to be allowed into this country.
Well, I mean,
but we've had as much immigration from outside of Europe as we've had from Europe in the last 2 years, and that hasn't seemed to cause any problems.
But this is one of the things we are discussing in the context of a comprehensive trade agreement. This is why it's so important to get the text on the table, because when you see the text, the 350 pages of it, you will see that there are provisions on services liberalisation, there are provisions on what's called Mode 4, which is movement of natural persons, movement of people, so that they can actually work in services operations, so they can actually cross borders and work in the hotels that Sir Rocco and others manage. These provisions are set out in a trade agreement, and they include labour movement mobility. So that's precisely why it's so important to see what an FTA can actually accomplish in this area, so that we can have a sensible discussion. Again, we know what a customs union is, we know what the single market is, we are less familiar, because we've not lived in these arrangements for 45 years, with what an FTA can actually do. That's why it's so important that we get this text out there for people to see. And I would point out that one of our co-launchers, Greg Hands, was the Trade Policy Minister and was, for Remain. So this is not a leave exercise, it's not an ERG exercise, it is what we're trying to do is to say, look, this is what an FTA can do, let's engage with stakeholders and see how much of this can deliver for business and for people.
It's a bit late, isn't it? I mean, we're due to leave in 51 days' time. Are we ready?
That's a different question. That's are we ready for no deal? That's a different question. What we're trying to do with this is not say, look, we're dealing with the withdrawal agreement problems and the issues with the withdrawal agreement through the Malthouse Compromise, through these other processes to figure out alternative arrangements. We fully support those discussions. We're trying to ensure we have a good result there so that we don't leave without a deal. We want to leave with a deal so that we can negotiate in the transition period, which under the Malthouse Compromise is a transition period that goes out to December 2021, not December 2020. So we have time to negotiate this sort of agreement, but it takes time to negotiate an FTA, and we need to start doing that now. We need to start thinking about that now.
Well, what do you reckon, Sir Rocco? Are we ready to leave in 51 days' time?
I think we are. Oh, sorry.
Sir Rocco.
The issue. It's very clear. It's a political issue at the moment. The Parliament has rejected the current withdrawal agreement, and Mrs May has agreed to go back to renegotiate parts of that. We'll see what she brings back.
Yeah, but it is still 51 days to go. We haven't even got agreement across the Conservative Party over what we want. I just wonder if you think it'd be a good idea to have a delay, perhaps.
No, what's a delay going to achieve? It's the same problems still exist, whether we have longer to discuss them or not.
I think it's very important that if we are putting proposals such as the Prime Minister is putting on the table for the European Union, that it's very important that they understand, that everybody understands that there is a deadline, because then the effect of pressure and compression on both negotiating teams will have an effect. Now, if we say, before we've even done that we're going to delay for another 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is, we're taking that pressure and compression off the end of the negotiation. And the EU, for which this withdrawal agreement as it's currently drafted is very favourable, will simply sit back and say, well, we'll break your process and we'll make sure you agree our deal. It's very important for the UK that pressure is on the Europeans at the end of the process. Now, if we get to the end of the process and then we find that we are negotiating, things are changing, we're making progress, nobody will have any problem with a small extension, a technical extension, so we can bring the negotiations to conclude them so that we can get the implementation period or the transition period. No one will have a problem with that.
See, the problem is you've just said to me that you want 3 years to negotiate your free trade agreement, and actually if we leave in 51 days without an agreement, there's going to be no transition period, let alone 3 years.
Right. So under the Malthouse Compromise.
Yeah, I know, but it's all right telling me about it. I know what the Malthouse Compromise says, but that's just what a pack of Tory MPs are saying. It's not what's been agreed with the European Union. But as things stand, we're leaving in 51 days' time. If we leave then without an agreement, there's no 3-year transition. Right.
That's
Do you
right.
agree?
There's no 3-year transition, but what there will
Which is
be,
what you want.
What we will seek. What we will. That's not what we want. What we will seek is.
But you do want a
in
3-year
that
transition. You just told me.
No. I just told you that we want a 3-year transition. We want
Exactly.
a deal that works. We want a deal that is neutral as to what the future framework is, and not a deal that is based on or starts from and predicates that we will have to remain in the customs union and the single market. We want to have a full discussion of what the options are, including a free trade agreement, which is government policy. It is what the Prime Minister has said. And so what we want to do is have that implementation period so that we can do the negotiation of a comprehensive FTA at that time. If that doesn't happen, and we don't control the European Union may not come up. We may make all the proposals in the world, and they may not agree them. And there is always the possibility when two sides are negotiating, as Sir Rocco knows from his business dealings, that you won't get a deal, and you must be prepared, and we should be trying to be prepared for that eventuality. But if we do leave without a deal, we will definitely seek, the UK and the EU will seek a very basic goods and agri-food zero tariff, no quantitative restrictions, basic FTA, which the Europeans will need to have because they export a huge amount of agriculture to the UK, $29 billion agricultural surplus, Bavarian dairy farmers, French wine, all of this.
90 billion surplus altogether.
So they will want, so they care about goods and agri-food. We care about services, that'll be our part of the negotiation. But at the very least, we will need to have that, so we have zero tariffs and we have no quantitative restrictions. But there's no doubt, there will be disruptions if we leave without a deal. That is why people are working so hard to try to bring people together and to get consensus for this Malthouse Compromise, so we can get a solution through the House of Commons that the Europeans can agree with, so that we get this longer period.
Thank you both very much indeed for joining us. This is All Out Politics.